Welcome to another edition of Trail Runner Nation. My name's Scott Warr.
And I'm Don Freeman. And today we have we call him a special guest because he is special. And we did a little countdown today that this is Brian Tosh's 10th visit here at Trail Runner Nation on a podcast. And we're excited about today's topic.
And it's still fewer hours. The 10 hours that we're going to be spending with Tosh is still fewer than the slowest known time that you guys both share the record. the crossing of the Western States 100 during COVID. It's still, you spent more time doing that than you did the 10 hours of podcasting.
We spent more time doing that run than most people do training for that run. It was a great experience, but that's not the only thing that Tosh has done. And you may have already heard our podcast on his row across the Atlantic, where his team literally went from one side to the other. And there's a great video, a YouTube video called The Standard. And if you haven't seen it, you need to see it. And if you've listened to the podcast, you have no doubt went and looked for it. So today we're having a different conversation. We're having it on a saying that I've heard Brian talk about on the trail. Tosh has actually said the mind's mind. And usually
we've actually talked about this. We've brought the mind's mind up on previous episodes, and we may have done a very poor job of defining it, but we've really never dug into it. And when we were talking about Tosh's crossing of the Atlantic in a rowboat, he brought it up again. And after we hit, the pause button or the stop button on our record for that episode, we thought we need to dig deeper into this mind's mind.
Let's talk about that. Tosh, what exactly is the mind's mind? Let's really get an understanding of what do you mean when you say the mind's mind?
I don't even know. It's there. I think people from all over through history, have referred to it as different things. It's just sort of my packaging and assimilating all of this with my experiences. And it's this little voice that's talking to your mind. It's your mind's mind. You're never privy to that voice, right? You're only privy to sort of trying to figure out what the conversation sounds. You're only privy to it secondhand through the conversation you have with your mind, right? Like but it's not like your subconscious either. It sounds hokey, right? It's like, you're out there and people say, hey, you're self-sabotaging. Like, what do you mean I'm self-sabotaging? Like, what does that look like? I don't even know that I am. Well, I can see it. Well, it's the mind's mind is working on your mind, and it's getting you to create a new narrative, move goalposts, switch priorities, try to let yourself down, whatever it is. And usually before you're aware that it's working against you, it's been happening for much sooner. Right, or much longer, I think is the right way to say it, before you become aware of it. And so what I teach is trying to recognize little signals so that you can, oh, that's the mind's mind talking to the mind. That's why I'm getting ready to do this or getting ready to do that, right? And I'm going nowhere right now because we're not warmed up. So this sounds really hokey and weird.
Actually, Tosh, I was just thinking, I think it was not hokey. I think it made sense. But can you give us an example of how the mind's mind works, maybe in relation to the row across the Atlantic or the container running challenge that we did a podcast on? Pick out a specific event, endurance event, and then walk us through an example of what the mind's mind, how that works within your brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's just pick the container run.
Okay. Explain that for those who haven't heard. Explain what the container run is, which it's nuts, is what it is.
Yeah. The funny thing is, we're getting ready to do it again next year with Black Rifle and make it harder. So I was just talking to Evan and Logan yesterday, But the container run was this thing that these two Canadians came up with to do some mental health awareness, something. And what they did was they got storage containers, shipping containers, and they put a true form runner in there. And the goal was to lock yourself in that container and see who could go the farthest on the true form runner, the non-motorized treadmill, in 24 hours. But the catch is we took the monitor off the true form. There was no light in there. You weren't allowed to have a watch. You weren't allowed to have music. It was a sensory deprivation and feedback and artificial stimulation absent environment. So
Yeah,
you're
no
in total
light,
darkness.
no light, total
light.
darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No feedback, no heart rate monitors, no sense of time, no nothing. Just you, your own thoughts, and who's going to go the farthest. And so we did that, and it was pretty cool. But you go in, right? Like you go into that container with some expectations. You set some goals. If you're truly a little bit more evolved, like you've figured out what some internal and external drivers are that help keep you going when things get cold, wet, tired, dark, damp, hungry, you're frustrated, confused, all that stuff, right? And then when you're in there, and then during the execution, and you have no sense of time, all of a sudden those goals start to shift and your expectations start to change, and you start to feel sorry for yourself, or you start to say, oh, well, this is good enough, or hey, how long? And things start working in your head. Well, that's in your head, right? That's in your mind, and you're having conversation. Your presence is having conversation with your mind, and you're fighting it. It's like, oh, hey, Tosh, like your feet are sore. Like, okay, hey, cool, the feet are sore. Like, I'm better than that. I'm tougher than that. My mind's stronger than that. Like, I'm not going to let my feet be sore, or me thinking, like, how many times have you been on the trail and you think you got a blister, and it's like, okay, I'm tough, and I'm going to run this blister out a little bit farther, and you do it, and you're running, and you're at the Tahoe 200, and you get like mile 120. And it's like, and you've been fighting your mind, talking about this blister the whole time. And then you finally like, okay, hey, cool. Like, I'm going to stop, sit down, take my sock off and look at this blister. And you take your sock off and like, there's nothing there, right? Like, or there's a tiny little red spot. It felt like this blister was the size of your whole foot, but it wasn't. It was just this tiny, tiny little thing. But the way the mind is working and it's calling attention to it, and then what's happening is it's sucking you in. It's trying to convince you to slow down, to stop, to like the situation's worse than it could be, or whatever the case is. And the reality is it's not all that, right? So like you're in this container and these little things are coming and you have nothing else to preoccupy yourself with, right? Or to distract you with. There's no music. Like you're just alone in there with your own thoughts. So these tiny little oochies and owies, these little aches, oh, I'm a little sleepy, whatever, they start to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they take on life. And you're applying all of your tricks to defeat that, right? Yet it's just still getting bigger, and you can't get away from it. Well, what's happening is you're having conversation with your mind, but your mind is being influenced by your mind's mind, and you don't know the little tricky things that mind's mind is doing to convince your mind to talk you into doing something that you don't want to do, right? You went in there to run the farthest. You went in there not to sleep. You went in there to win. You went in there for all these reasons, right? The mind's talking to the mind, working its magic. You're having conversations with your mind, and then the mind is getting more and more convincing to you to move your goalpost. Well, I'm going to sit down for 15 minutes. I'm going to close my eyes for a minute. Oh, I'm going to take my shoe off, like to do these other little things, right? And that's happening in the background. You're only privy to what the mind is telling you, but the mind is being influenced really strongly by its mind, right? So it's like you trying to figure out what that conversation is. What are the tricks that this mind's mind is playing on my mind to get me to be less than I could be, right? To let myself down in the future, to move my goalposts, whatever the case may be. And that's what the mind's mind is, right? I say that the mind's mind is wired, and it's not a bad thing either, right? Like some people say, oh, Tosh, what you're talking about is you've got like the good angel and the bad angel, or the angel and the devil on the shoulder, and having two guys. Like, not really. It's a little bit different than that in its subtle ways, right? Like, the mind's mind is not evil or bad. It's not against you. The mind's actually ridiculously essential. It's why I think like human beings have been allowed to progress as far as we have, right? And evolve. The mind's mind is essential for us, but I think it's wired for three things: survival, safety, and comfort. That's what the mind's wired for. It is always trying to work its craft on the mind to convince you, your conscious you, for survival, safety, and comfort, right? Because we're, as present human beings, we're ambitious. If we weren't ambitious, we would just kind of walk around, have sex, eat, and sleep. That's what we would pretty much do, right? And anything that supported that. But we're not. We're ambitious. We're conscious. We're sentient creatures. We're evolved, and we want to do things. We want to push ourselves. In this community that we're talking to right now, Trail Runner Nation, right? Like they do these ultra endurance events to push themselves, to find their new limits, to explore their potential, to find challenge, right? Like, your mind's mind doesn't want to do that. It wants to sit down there on the couch eating potato chips, smoking a joint, drinking Diet Coke, and watching Clint Eastwood westerns. That's what your mind's mind wants to do, right? But if you just listen to your mind's mind all the time, that's what you'd be doing. But we don't. We're trying to achieve, right? Does this make sense? And so, survival, safety, comfort.
It does. So as I listen to the mind's mind in your explanation, I heard safety, survival, and comfort. So it's not always self-sabotaging. It's not an evil voice. Sometimes it can be a voice for good. Is that correct?
100%. I mean, it's essential.
So how can you distinguish when the mind's mind is vocal? Can you say, that's my mind's mind? Have you developed the sense and awareness to know which mind is talking to you and speaking to you?
Your mind, you only have the opportunity to talk to your mind. So you're only ever talking to your mind. Your mind is being influenced by the mind's mind, but you don't ever hear it speak. You only hear the interpretations, right, from your mind. And the better you get, the more stronger you get up here in the head, right? You develop your mind, you get tougher, the resiliency and mental toughness and all these cute words that are out there. Like, hey, so the mind's not working on it as well, and you're achieving. That's why you're still running. That's why you're at mile 120 and you're still going to 130 to 140, right? But at a certain point, this mind's mind it evolves very, very quickly. So the better you get at harnessing the power of your mind to achieve, to ignore discomfort, to ignore distractions, to synthesize information, the better you get, the better your mind's mind gets at its craft to try to persuade your mind to seek survival, safety, or comfort. Right? So you're only privy to the one conversation.
As you're talking through this, I'm reflecting on some discussions we've had on previous episodes about the central governor theory. Is that related? Are you familiar with the central governor theory, and is that related to this?
I think so. But this central governor, as I understand it, that has to do a lot with physiological stuff, right? Your central governor drives a lot of this other this mind's mind is in the energy space, the hokey wooey, right? Like this thought, and it's going to use the functioning of your central governor. Oh, hey Tosh, hey Tosh's mind, like, hey, look, your heart rate's getting really, really high right now. Like, you should probably sit down, right? Like it's using that to ply its craft to get you to seek survival, safety, or comfort. It's going to make your mind think that it is in an unsafe environment, that it is in a survival mode to get you to when perfectly safe. You're in the middle of the woods, it's dark, and there's a wolf howling and it's cold and it's like, hey, and all of a sudden, and even though you're only 400 yards from your house, you start to get scared and you start to do this and that, and you're trying to do something, and then the mind's working, the mind, and then finally the mind gets convinced, like, oh, hey, this isn't safe out here. Well, we should go back home, right? Like, and then you go back home, and then you don't accomplish your task. The funny thing is sleep deprivation. I've said this all the time, right? I mostly started in my military career 15, 20 years ago. Sleep deprivation makes safety officers of everybody, right? Right now, you're perfectly energized. You're in the most sober of conditions. And I don't mean with alcohol, like your highest capacity. You could look at this 10-foot jump and be like, oh, it's perfectly safe. Like, hey, boom, and you do the jump, and you do the jump over and over and over again. You've done it 10,000 times. You go for 24 hours with no sleep, 36 hours no sleep. You're a little bit cold. All of a sudden, that 10-foot jump, oh, that's a little dangerous. I don't know if I should do that. We should be safe. Like, hey, that's not safe, right? I've seen it in the adventure racing community where you're going for 5 days, 6 days, 500, 600 miles, and you're pushing yourself hard, and like the body's breaking down, the mind is breaking down, right? You're just getting really, really tired, sleep deprivation. And at the beginning of the race, it was just like, hell's bells, like, let's roll. Now all of a sudden it's like, oh, we should slow down on our mountain bikes on this single track trail because it's dangerous. The trail's not dangerous. Your faculties may be more impaired, but your mind's mind is winning over your mind and convincing you that it's dangerous. Therefore, you should change behavior.
So is this, what is the advantage of knowing about the mind's mind? Is it knowing how to deal with those voices your mind is telling you and saying, hey, listen, maybe you should slow down, and you're going, nope. Hey, I know that the mind's mind is working on you here. Or is it trying to silence the mind's mind? How do you use this now that you know the knowledge and how this kind of works? What can we do to be better?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to push our limits, right? We're constantly trying to do more. I think a question before that, because it's around awareness. It's have you ever done a race and you finished and you got done and it's Wednesday and you're having your cup of coffee and the sun's rising and you're all rested up. It's 3 days after the race and you look back and you're like, man, I'm a little disappointed that I did that there. I'm a little disappointed that I made that decision. I'm a little disappointed that my actions were this when I know like my value system or my goals and this and that are that. And now that I'm reflecting back, I could have been better. I could have done more. I could have made a different decision. One, it's a function of armchair quarterback, right? Like Monday night quarterback, whatever it is. In reflection, you're not succumbing to the energy. So 3 days later, now that you're warm and rested, like you're outside of the conditions, so it's easy to, but there's something else there too. It was the mind's mind was influencing your mind to set you up so that now today, looking back, you're a little disappointed, right? You look at these people that achieve amazing things. Let's face it, the four of us are all average human beings, and we can throw a name on the board, and it's like that person achieves to a degree, to 2 or 3 different degrees greater than I ever could imagine. Like, what do they have? How can they do it? Like, I'm stronger, I'm more handsome, I'm smarter, I'm like, I had more food, like whatever it is, right? But yet they still achieving to these elevated degrees. Well, they're able not to prematurely succumb to the influences of the mind's mind as readily as the rest of us, right? So that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to understand it. And it's like, why yield, right? Why yield before you should yield, right? Why acquiesce? Why submit sooner, prematurely, when you could go a little bit farther, when you could do a little bit more, you could be a little bit better, you could make the right decision when faced with a ton of peer pressure and influence, and then you end up choosing this instead of that, right? When you know that the former is the right thing to do, but it's just so hard to do, right? Like this transcends just the physical space, right? I think about this in terms of young adults and peer pressure. I think back about myself, right? Think survival, safety, comfort. You're a young adult and you're going through life, and it's messy because you're going through a lot of changes and you're trying to find identity and this and that, and that's what this peer pressure is. And you know what's right? Like, I shouldn't do that. My mother and my father are going to be upset. It's wrong. I've been told it's wrong. It doesn't feel right. Something, but yet you yield to the peer pressure, right? It's your mind's mind convincing your mind to do the wrong thing because it's more comfortable. Because to say no to the group of teenagers that you're with you're going to be ridiculed. You're not going to be favored. You're not going to be the cool guy. You're going to be left out, whatever. So the mind's mind is actually seeking the comfort, right? Does that make sense? And
yeah,
so this is a way that the mind's mind can actually be calibrated depending on where you're at in your life and what you're doing.
It answered all of those three topics. It is not comfortable to be the outsider. It's not safe to be outside that group, and it's not for survival if you want to be part of that unit. So the mind's mind worked perfect in that scenario and gave you the right answer for those three topics of survival, safety, and comfort.
Except the mind's mind was doing exactly what it is for. Except that the mind got confused and wasn't strong enough to refuse the mind's mind in this case and say, hey, you are right, mind's mind, but not in this context.
Right.
Not in this context, not in this environment, not in this situation. And so that's what we have to do, our conscious self with our mind, right, is to continually train and get stronger, right? Hey, like rowing across the Atlantic Ocean, had we been in a horrific situation and the mind's mind screaming, you need to push the SOS button, something, right? I would like to think that my conscious self with my mind is working through that. You know what? Yes, it is time to push the SOS button. I could be stubborn, and I think being stubborn is a healthy tool when used in the right way, and not push the SOS button, and the next thing you know, we're all in jeopardy, right? I did that when I was in Sweden. We talked, I think, one of the earliest podcasts about, we were talking Arrowhead 135 and my struggles there. And what the genesis for me even doing the 135 was my failure in Sweden, and a lot of hubris, a lot of machismo, and not wearing the right equipment to swim across this glacial lake, and I went hypothermic, right? And I lost the ability to outmind the mind's mind, and the mind's mind lost the ability to do anything. I was drowning. I was literally going hypothermic, right? Like, and I think that's when I first started to play with these things. And then when I failed the Arrowhead 135 the first time, and I'm looking back at that, and I'm like, that is the perfect mind's mind scenario. Convinced me to let myself down. And then I failed it again the second time, and it was like, I thought I had figured it out, and I figured it out so well, but the mind's mind was keeping pace, and I went further and I did better, but I was in a different situation, and he keeps working and he tricked me again, and I'm learning how to not fall prey to the potential conversations that I think the mind's mind is having with the mind, so that I can continue to push myself, continue to explore new capacity, new limits.
So earlier I asked, can you hear the difference when your mind or your mind's mind is speaking to you, as if they're two different voices? And clearly I was wrong. It's a silent influence that the mind's mind has on your mind. It's not vocal, but influences. So I'm going to ask the same question, hopefully with a little bit more clarity. Can you, when you're out there in an environment, and what I really do like is, this is more than just on the trail, on the ocean, on a mountain. It has to do with real life. It's a kid at a playground. It's you in a relationship. It's you in a work situation. It applies across the board to everyone in any situation if there's gravity, it applies to you. So it can happen anywhere. I'm going to re-ask the question now. Can you sense when there's been some influence on your decision making? Can you separate somehow and say, I think I've been influenced here? Do you make a conscious decision out there, wherever you are, that I have been influenced here with my mind's mind?
Yeah, and that's through the training.
Yeah.
Right? That's through training, and that's, I think, awareness number one of this concept. And you know what? Like, hey, I think the concept is working for me. Can it be refined? Sure. Can the three of us on this call all refine it in different ways so that it suits them? For sure. Can the thousands of people that are listening to your podcast, can they all refine this so that the theme of what I'm presenting makes the most sense to them? For sure. I believe in intuition. I believe that as human beings, we've, now we're getting out there, but I'm okay. I'm not a kook. I believe that as human beings, we start to get inundated with stuff that a lot of our natural abilities have become blunted, right? And our ability for intuition has sort of been blunted because of all the stimulus we get, and the ability to process information, and all the education. Like a great example, I was reading this book. It's one of the book of the days out there about Native Americans. I've been fascinated with Native Americans, and it's like, hey, they could sense when there was danger. They could sense when the mountain lion was on the cliff looking over them, or a bear was in the, like, and you get in tune with these people that live in nature all the time, and they haven't been inundated with a lot of other stuff that our society has, and their senses are they heightened, or are the distractions that are blocking those senses less, right? I don't know, cart before the horse, horse before the cart, chicken, egg, something. But it's like, I'm thinking that as we have an awareness of this concept, and you can start thinking about it, just posing the question, even if it's not valid, but just posing the question can create these patterns in you, right? So that we can increase the ability for our intuition to be recognized, right? This is some of the personal work that I'm doing in my life, right? For growth, hyperactive mind and whatever. And it's like, hey, I need to get back in touch with some of these other things, if you believe in that stuff, and recognizing intuition. And I feel that out there. Like, I'll feel that. I'm like, hey, Tosh. And then I've built my checklist procedures to like go through and do the scans and then reset and calibrate. Hey, is this a function of the mind's mind? Is the mind's mind winning right here? What do I need to do? And bring it back into this rational place to do some stuff. And even if I'm right or wrong, whether I'm right or wrong, having the conversation with the mind helps let the mind do what the mind does best, right? Do some calculation, and it's like, hey, if the mind is only listening to its mind and not you, right? The mind's mind is best when it has two agents talking to it, right? And it can sort through the information in its best possible way and then help drive you, right? And then, there's another thing. We have will, and we have being stubborn, and we have our goals that all try to spirit us against the mind's mind, right? But I don't, we talk about, like, so I do events. That's what I do at Diesel Days, is I bring people in here and we do a 24-hour event, and I've carefully, cultivated an experience that will meet you where you're at, regardless of your physical ability, regardless of where you're at in your mental space, what you have going on, right? And it's a way for you just to I create the meeting room for you to meet yourself through a physical activity and work through this. And I coach and I guide you through these conversations with the mind's mind. And I introduce my framework, checking in with the left hand. And it's the framework that I use when I'm trying to endeavor towards something, and I catch myself having a thought, or catch myself doing an action, or having a feeling or something. And it's like, okay, it's time to pull out the left hand, pick a finger, start going through what that finger represents. It might lead me to a different finger, it might lead me back to the same finger, another finger. And then the next thing you know, I've solved, and I'm able to move forward and press through adversity, challenge, struggle, right? And you said something when you first introduced your reframed question, which I don't think you had it wrong, Don. I just don't think I was communicating well in the beginning, and we just didn't have the conversation right? I don't think you were wrong or anything. I just think we're in a better place to have understanding now. But you said something in the beginning about, hey, this isn't just for when you're on the trail. This isn't for something when you're on a mountain or on the ocean. Like, I like to design frameworks, models, right, and have belief systems and paradigms that work across everything. I'm a fan of consistency. I don't want to have a framework that's just for combat. I don't want to have a framework that's built just for the boardroom. I don't want to have a framework that's just for baseball, just for chess. I want to have a framework, a way of thinking, a way of life, right? Processing my world, guiding my actions, right? That transcends all different, like, and I can hold it consistent across the board. Clint Bruce said it best when he's way better with words than I am. He said, Tosh, what you're doing is you're leveraging some experiences from the battlefield and the ball field, and you're making them applicable to the boardroom and breakfast table. And I'm like, exactly. Like, these things that I'm arriving at and starting to believe and understanding and applying in my life can be in any situation, right? The breakfast table, it's with your loved ones, it's with your family, it's with, your social system. In the boardroom, that's your profession, your job, your task, your responsibilities, right? The ball field, that's you exploring the field of play and adventure. The battlefield, like, doesn't necessarily mean combat shooting bad guys. It means, like, we all have battlefields in our head, right? We all battle our own neuroses and our own dysfunctions and our own, like, mental health and all these other things. Like, everybody has a battlefield, right? Things that we struggle. So I'm building this conceptual framework that you could use across any one of those four areas: battlefield, ball field, boardroom, breakfast table. And this mind's mind is one of these concepts that I keep thinking about, right? The checking with the left hand is the actual tool framework that I use to challenge the mind's mind, or challenge my state, my current state, to be able to explore whether I'm not prematurely succumbing or not, or I'm, getting ready to let myself down, or if I'm still want to be towards achievement, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's what I use that for.
Hey, Tosh, if people are listening to this and identify with it and want more training on it and heard about Diesel Days, by the way, I have your Diesel Days shirt. The front says Diesel Days. The back says breakfast table, ball field, battlefield, and boardroom. That's going to be on the back of the shirt. But tell me about Diesel Days. Could I go somewhere and get trained on this so I can apply it to my life, or my kid's life, or my spouse's life?
Yeah. And this is wild, right? Like, so I first started out 5 years ago offering this Diesel Day, and it started, the naming of it was from old military days when it was just like, hey, once a month, it was physical training with the company commander. And basically it was a big giant hazing session, right? Like, like, you just wear these guys out, wear your men out, like, hours. But in design, it was so much more. I was trying to teach leadership. I was trying to teach teamwork. I was testing critical military skills, building cohesion, things like that. But it got coined Diesel Day because our call sign at the time was Diesel. And basically it was just once a month, the company commander did this hellacious physical activity. And everybody cringed, like, knowing that it's coming up next week. And then they did it, and they hum and they hawed, and then they got crushed. But they came out the other side completely different, stronger, physically, mentally, spiritually, the whole 9 yards, right? Tactically, technically. And so I created an event here for a bunch of people that just wanted to, like, hey, Tosh, we want you to train us, teach us to be tough, like mental resilience, things like that. I'm like, oh, okay, like, let me put together something. And basically come to the house here in Boulder, and for 24 hours we do a physical activity. It's been the same exact physical activity for all 5 years. We're on course number 19 through 24 this year. It's already scheduled. And you're doing something for 24 hours consistently, right? I don't give away the whole thing, right? Like, but you're moving, and I'm taking care of your nutrition for you, and I'm educating you on nutrition and your hydration and blisters. I'm doing it's a like total. You think some of the support that we get at Candace's races at the aid stations are phenomenal? Like, I blow that out of the water, right? Because I use Candace's model of an aid station, right? As like, hey, that's awesome. That's what I want to do. This is full service. This is 5-star treatment while you are punishing yourself, right? But before that, we engage on some goal setting. We engage on finding out what your internal and external drivers are, your reasons for coming to a diesel day, et cetera, right? And in the beginning, most people just wanted a physical beatdown. And they come here and say, oh, 24-hour event with Tosh, like that's going to be gnarly. Like, and they get a physical beatdown. However, they leave here having received what they wanted in the physical sense, but tenfold, like, oh my God, that was so much more than a physical experience. And I always say it's a psychological experience. It's masquerading as a physical experience, right? And we're working through all this mind's mind stuff. We're working through, and you'd be surprised what comes up for people during the 24 hours here, like sun up, sun down, through the evening, in the woods, back to the house, to the woods, to the house, sun back up, and then done. What comes up for people. And I'm there coaching and mentoring, counseling through what's coming up for them psychologically in order to spirit them towards finishing in their goals. And, so pause for a second. The night before, so everybody comes into the house the night before the 24-hour event, mid-afternoon, late afternoon, and we have a big social. I do a giant dinner for them. We do a 1.5 hour conversation on this intellectual property of the mind's mind and the checking in with the left hand. We do some refinement of some goal setting. We hang out, we socialize. Then they go to bed in these wall tents that I have. It's clamping. They clamp in my front yard, more or less. And then we wake up the next morning. We execute for 24 hours. And then we have a barbecue with small debrief. Everybody goes home, and then I engage via email and video calls for continued integration for individuals as they self-select to continue engaging. And we're changing people's lives. And I don't say that lightly, and I don't say that to chest beat. I've had women come through that were subject to a lot of sexual abuse, sexual harassment through their years. I've had people that have lost 300 pounds that still have 200 pounds to lose. I've had people that have suffered serious injuries. I've had elite athletes. I've had mothers that have gone through postpartum depression. I've had, like, you name it, the gambit. 162 participants so far, 162 if you count Diesel Day 2. And we've had every single person make it through the 24 hours, right? Knock on wood. Everybody make it through the 24 hours because the event is self-scaled to meet you with where you're at physically and psychologically, right? And so with the staff that I have, and we're constantly reading and influencing and energizing, right? And we scale it where needed, because what we're trying to do is just create a stimulus to be able to break things down to allow this conduit to flow, this psychological conduit to flow without you having the energy to suppress it, so that we can identify it, show it to ourselves, work through it, understand it, and then develop the strategy on the left hand to work through it constructively and arrive out the other end better. And
hey, Tosh, is this just a way that you can stock up on your wood pile for the winter? You just have people going out to the forest, chopping the wood, bringing it back. No, I'm just joking.
That's a different event.
Hey, I'm curious, as you're going through this, it's obvious that this is not just a concept that once you understand it, that you're going to be able to implement it effectively the first time. You mentioned a couple times early on that it's something that you have to train yourself, that you have to exercise and experience it. And the more you experience it, the better you become at dealing with the mind's mind. But a few times you talked about the check-in or the checklist, the left hand. Is that something that you can share, or as you know, we have a big race happening here in our neck of the woods next week. There's people that are going to be out there pushing themselves beyond what they've done in the past, and they may have an experience where they see this mind's mind. And I guess the big thing is now that they know this concept, they can check in and say, you know, my mind wants me to quit. My mind wants me to slow down. My mind wants me to throw in the towel. And now that I have this concept that this mind's mind is influencing my mind, how do I check in to see, am I in real physical danger here, or is my mind's mind just trying to make me stop, so that I'm safe and secure, and comfortable?
Excuse me.
That was a loaded question.
I will deliver the checking in with the left hand. I will give our audience. I'm gonna include myself and call it our audience. Since I've been on your podcast for 10 times, I figure it's kind of a little bit mine too now.
It's yours. It's yours.
I'll share the 5 things. And I'll
a lot of this,
tease
Tosh,
a little bit for a couple minutes.
I'm going to interrupt and just say a lot of this is your intellectual property that you're revealing it to some of our listeners now for the first time outside of your camp, and we really appreciate it and know that over this hour we talk about some concepts and we're kind of selecting some items, but it doesn't substitute 24 hours of work and a half a day worth of training before the event, and then the post discussion afterwards, that those that self-select to continue with you. This is just a little taste of what you offer. So thank you for opening up and showing us some of the pages in this novel.
No, you're welcome. And it's because I appreciate you guys, and your social credit speaks volumes, and your reputation, and my experience with both of you guys. Unfortunately, Ryan, we've never met, but yeah, man, it's the least I can do for everything that you've done for me, and I think we're all in it for others. So that's the audience I choose to be in. You know, I'm working on a book right now. We're going to release an ebook hopefully by the end of the year, and we're building out the program. I started a subscription service so that you can dabble in some of this stuff at a much lower barrier to entry in terms of cost, and just sort of feel it out a little bit too. So I have no problem sharing at all. But what I did want to say is I've got people that have been through the Diesel Day course. And so now, right now, I'm working on a licensing type process so people can take this stuff and use it in their own spaces. Because I'm finding we've got a gentleman up in Canada that's using this for depression, anxiety, and some drug rehabilitation issues, right? He's coupling this with cognitive-based therapy, CBT, and he's rolling a program out in Canada right now. I've got a young lady that's doing this in Texas, and a focus group with females that have faced sexual assault and harassment. I've got another one that's doing it in Ohio that's doing drug rehab for rehabilitation, and we've got another program starting in Colorado Springs this month, actually, for veterans with PTSD, and potentially with a contract with the VA. So like, this is really, really exciting stuff for me. It's moving so much faster. But I guess the only reason I'm saying that is like, hey, it's working. And you know what? Like, if it doesn't work for you either, like, hey, that's fine too. Like, I'm okay with it. It's just somebody else's material. I'm just another voice in a 1,000 voices saying, hey, I have something that works, right? I just believe that I believe that I'm actually giving you something concrete, and your left hand goes with you everywhere and if you don't have a left hand, then just make it your right hand or use a foot or something. But like, the theme is there and it's with you, and you don't have to pull a book out and go through your notes and figure out, oh, chapter 13, I have to do this. Like, it's so simple, right? And it actually works. Like, this is working when you are in extremist situations, let alone these things that we think are extremist situations that aren't, right? Like, everybody's bullshit works until it doesn't. And I'm finding that my bullshit is working way beyond where a lot of this other stuff, because this other stuff wasn't founded with the unique background that I have, and fundamentally applied in those situations, right? I'm using a body of work and I'm reflecting back on it and reverse engineering some stuff instead of trying to create something and then make it fit different situations, right?
Right.
And so this concept of the mind's mind is really, really big. And there's still another direction I wanted to take that, if I don't forget here before we get done. But basically the left hand material, it's a framework for when you find yourself in adversity, right? You're in conflict, whether it's inner conflict, external conflict, you're cold, wet, tired, dark, damp, you're hungry, you're pissed off, you're unmotivated, whatever, right? Like we're finding ourselves in some sort of adversity or challenge or struggle. Struggle against what? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Struggle against anything. And all you need to do is just like a moment for pause and just look at your left hand and pick a finger and just start having a conversation with that finger for what it represents. And that conversation may move to a different finger for what and eventually you're going to work through something and have moved the needle, right? And a part of it is, it's actually, so one of the reasons why it works is because you're actually engaging your mind. So now I have my mind's attention, not the mind's mind. I have my mind's mind, or my mind's attention, right? I'm having a conversation with it. It is occupied here and not being influenced over there. I'm also, a lot of times when we find ourselves in these situations of conflict, we switch from this rational place and this cognitive space and we start to get more emotional, right? And emotions don't mean irrational. Emotions taken to an excess and extreme and fundamentally not worked through can become irrational. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to get our mind from being overweighted in an emotional place and bringing them back into a little bit more of a rational, calculated process, right? And we're giving it something to focus on. The first one is just simply the thumb, and you stick your thumb up and it's, I'm okay. Right. And there's some things with this, right? It's, you have to say it out loud. You say it with a big, giant, deep breath. You say it to something so that you can get the visual feedback. You get the auditory feedback. So there's the reinforcement there. There's the physiological effects of taking the big, giant, deep breath. It's the pause. It's like, hey, I'm okay. And we can continue in the conversation. You know, it's a lot of from the Stoic books and Marcus Aurelius, and he's got a quote in his meditations that says, what is going on for me right now that makes me think my situation is so unbearable? Right? I'm okay. Hey, what is going on for me right now that is making me think my situation is so unbearable? And once I can get out of an emotional space of a feeling of unbearable to, okay, putting a label on, hey, it's this, then I can actually calculate and like dismiss, or, oh, accept, and then work to solve. But you can't dismiss or work to solve unless you're aware, right? And then, but the more founding part of that comment or that quote from him is, and would I be embarrassed to share it? Right? So you read Meditations, read Marcus Aurelius. It's a lot of this is coming from this thumbs up stuff is coming from a very Stoic philosophy. So I'm okay. The next one is this pointy finger, and this is this finger. You can see it. Like I see it everywhere in people's conversations. They don't even know it. They're always pointing their finger at something else. Right? Judgment, making assumptions. Right? Placing blame. They're always pointing the finger. Well, when you point the finger at something, it's usually not yourself, right? And some people do point the finger at themselves. Like, just you guys just be quiet for a second, just listen, because I'm gonna, a lot of times when you're pointing the finger at yourself, you're actually just going through these superficial motions of, oh, I'm gonna point, but really, the conversation is you're pointing at somebody else, and with a well-tuned ear, you can hear it, right?
Yeah.
But if you point your finger at something, you flip it over. There's 3 fingers pointing back at you, so we can have an opportunity then to take ownership So instead of like, oh, I didn't, I can't keep going. It's so hot out. The sun's in the sky and it's so hot. And like, you can't control the sun. Right? Okay, cool, great. Sun's in the sky. Well, let's flip the script over. Point it. 3 are coming back at you. Well, what can you do? Right? It allows you to have ownership, take responsibility for some actions instead of, oh, well, hey, Scott's making fun of me, blah, 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 blah. Like, hey, I'm pointing at Scott instead of flipping it over. Well, I can reinvent that story. Well, Scott may be just using me to make fun of himself. Well, Scott might not have all the information, or Scott is a douchebag. It gives me responsibility to have the response that I want to have, right? And control the situation instead of letting the situation control me. This pointy finger is really powerful because it's so much. It's the art of invention. It's the art of possibility. That's Benjamin Zander. It's making assumptions. It's judging. It's blaming. It's just it's the thief of comparison. Ralph Waldo Emerson, right? This pointy finger, right? It's a function that you'll find people that are always pointing. And if you really start to psychoanalyze them, they're using the pointy finger to self-shame. And a big conversation I had with Angus today on that. It's a fascinating conversation. But anyways, so I'm okay, pointy finger. This is the vaunted fuck you. That's the middle finger. What else could it be, right? And it's some things just need a good old-fashioned fuck you, right? Like, hey, I'm tired. Like, hey, fuck you. Good. And then you move forward, right? Jocko's good,
yeah.
Right? But and everybody likes it and think, oh, that's so simple, but it's way deeper, right? I can take that, and so like let's just say you have your knee starting to ache. You're running the Tahoe 200, right, Don, and you're going up and down, your knee starts to ache. Well, your mind's focused on the knee, and the more your mind thinks about the knee, what's the knee do? Aches more.
And it
starts aching more. And it starts aching more. It's like, hey, whoa. Hey, sometimes if you just tell that knee, hey, you know what, knee? Hey, fuck you. You're supposed to hurt. We're going up and down hills. This is your job. Like, stop crying about it. It's funny, but it tends to go away for a little while, right? Or at least it stops right there and doesn't get worse. It's like, oh shit, like. Like sometimes when you're in an argument, it's, whatever, you can pick it. Like I'm just using a physical example, but we could use a relationship example as well. And it might not be using the words, but that's the response that a situation needs, because otherwise I'm putting energy into a situation. Ryan and I are in conflict, and I can give him the energy back that he's giving me, and we're going to keep bouncing this negative energy back and forth until somebody just is like, you know what? Fuck that. I can't say that to Ryan because then I would be he'd probably punch me, right, and knock me out. But like I can choose not to continue to bounce this energy back with you. I'm like, it's just art of dismissal. I do it all the time. I had this lady at the FedEx office the other day, and she was just giving me. I was like, and I just said stop. I said, hey man, are you okay? And she looked at me. I was like, yeah, why? I'm like, oh, I'm just checking because I just wanted to check. I felt something rising in me because I wanted to respond the way she was treating me as a customer, as the general manager. And all I did was walk in and trying to mail a package, right? And so I chose the middle finger to, hey man, are you okay? Created some space, right? And then I whipped out the middle finger. In my head, this is all happening really, really fast. I'm making some judgments about her. I'm making some assumptions. I just need to turn this over. Hey, maybe she's having a bad day. Maybe it's not me. Maybe she's stressed out. Maybe she's got somebody on hold. Like I can invent different things that allows me to, right, and not extend this. It's classic conflict resolution, right? But this middle finger with the knee, like at a certain point, you can't like outfuck a problem. You can try, right? And it's only, but eventually the knee's gonna like the next step. And this is conflict resolution. This is relationships. It's like, okay, hey, cool. Like I've told you to just knock it off over and over again. And I get it. You're still knocking, right? Okay, great. Let me listen to you. What's going on for you, knee? Hey, knee. Like, hey, well, Well, I think I twisted it back there and I'm doing damage. Like, well, hey, let's not go there. Like, we're not saying that you're broken. We don't need to quit and drop out of the race because I'm afraid that like, let's just have a conversation. I hear you. Hey, check it out. Like the next aid station is 6 miles. What if we make an agreement that I will slow down a little bit and we'll get to the next aid station. Then we'll sit down, and then we'll have another conversation. Can you just get to the next aid station for me? Sometimes an angry voice just needs to be heard, right? Like, think about this when you're in an argument with your spouse or your other, and neither of you are listening because you both want to be heard. And it's like, oh, okay, hey, cool. Like, I've diffused, and you're still going. It's like, okay, hey, cool. Like, let me hear you. And as soon as the other person feels like they're, like, no kidding, genuinely feels like they're being received and understood, intended to, and cared for, they soften. And now we can get into this place of calculating, figuring some things out. Same thing with your knee, right? And then there's another step to this, and we can build it out, but we're just doing wave tops here with the middle finger. But go ahead, Don.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, you can't do a tug of war match when the other person drops the rope. When there's nothing there, there's no resistance. The game isn't fun anymore, and so it stops. I mean, that's kind of an example.
Oh, perfect example. I use when I'm giving the lecture, I use the bully. A bully at school only because I like to give different examples, different places. Like the bully at school is picking on you because it's getting the response that it wants. Right? If you don't give them the response, okay, hey, they go pick on somebody else. Right? Like, and so yeah. Anyways, yeah, we're saying the same thing. Yeah, drop the rope. Drop the rope. But yeah, the middle finger, like I always like, hey, fuck you for a while, because it's the blister story. Oh, if I stopped every time I felt like I was getting a blister, I'd never get anywhere. And the reality is, if I go farther and farther and farther, then I finally stop and I take a look at it and I realize, like, that blister that felt like it was this big, it's really only just a tiny little red spot that's getting warm, but it felt so big. That's because the mind was talking to it for the last 10 miles. And it's getting its attention that it wants, so it's going to keep talking back, and it's going to get bigger, and it's going to tell you bigger and bigger fishtails. It's kind of like me on this podcast. The more you get me talking, the more I talk, the more I talk, the more I talk, the more I ramble. Right?
Tosh, I remember a gold nugget that you said early in one of our discussions on the podcast, that when you start feeling an achy knee or a niggle or whatever, that you give it a designated time. You say, okay, I'm going to let you talk. I'm going to listen to you for 1 minute. After that minute, we're not talking. I'm not listening to you anymore. And I don't know if that plays into this a little bit, where you do give it a voice and you say, okay, knee, I hear you. I'm going to give you another minute, and we're going to listen to you. But after that minute, then we're going to get down to the next aid station. We'll have a discussion down there.
Yeah, one of my very early clients, one-on-one clients, Diesel Mike, he coined it the Tosh 10. He gives himself 10 minutes, like when he's having, this isn't an insult, I'm just using it, like he has a pity party for himself, or he's having a breakdown, or whatever. It's like, okay, cool. Like, I'm not going to do you any good mentoring you, saying, hey, stop that. Right? I'm probably about me saying, hey, stop that, stop being a bitch. Like, it's probably going to, okay, you're going to stop it, but it's going to still fester inside and still get bigger and bigger. And then the next time it comes out, it's going to explode. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I practiced this with him a few times because I was putting him through some really hard stuff, right? Because we were exploring. And it's like, hey, just take 10 minutes, man. Just take 10 minutes. Just throw your temper tantrum, do this, feel sorry for whatever it looks like. Give it a time limit. Let it be what it's going to be. And then when it's done, we're done with it. We're done with it. And then now we've got to get back in the rational space, and we got to start solving some stuff. So let's go to this emotional place. Let's vent some of these manifesting emotions so that they can get out of the way, so that we can figure out what the root emotion is or two, and then we can start calculating, and then we can start problem solving so that we can keep winning. And that's what this middle finger is. It's to give you some space. We're trading time, space and time, right? For opportunity. The next one's the ring finger. And this is why it's not on the right hand, it's on the left hand. It was originally going to be the right hand, but we put the ring in the US and on the ring finger on the left hand, and it's about commitments. It's about goals, right? So proper goal setting. Like, no shit. Like, when we do these goal setting classes and this and that, and it's all really cool and acronym smart and it's all great, but a lot of times it's not genuine, authentic, like when we set goals, we set our goals when we're in the most sober of states of mind, right? And they should be well planned, thought through, the acronym SMART done to the diligence that it's supposed to, right? And then when we get in an event and we start to experience the event, our faculties are diminishing, you would say. We're much less of our sober state than we were when we were rested, well-fed, warm, happy, loved, whatever, right? Now we're day 3 or we're 12 hours or we're 2 miles or wherever it is where you're at in your scale of activity. And all of a sudden, like we can start moving goalposts, right? And the mind's working on that, survival, safety, comfort, right? And we're going to move some goalposts or whatever. Oh, well, and then we start rationalizing. This was a big reflection from my Arrowhead 135 we talked about on a podcast or two. And we start rationalizing, and then next thing you know, our mind is convincing us, and then we're reinforcing to the mind that that's totally right. That's totally right. That's it. And then we do that thing, right? We let ourselves down. But then 2 weeks later, when we're rested, well-fed, happy, full of love, we're looking back, and you're like, oh, that was my mind's mind in my mind talking to it. It convinced my mind, then the mind was talking to me, and it convinced me, and I reinforced it, and that's why I made this decision, right? So what I like to do with my ring finger, it's goal setting, and then I like to remember the future because I had a past experience, right? And I've set my goals, and then I try to remember the future. What is it going to feel like when I've achieved those things? What's it going to look like? Who's going to be with me when I arrive at my goal? Right? What does it look like if I don't achieve the goal? What are some things that I'm going to experience during my event that's going to try to manifest and convince me that my goal was too lofty in the beginning or it's unachievable now? And what was the spirit of the goal meant to be? And even though I don't get the actual goal in the physical sense, can I still preserve the spirit of it, right? And so I use the ring finger in the middle of an event to go back in time to remember what my goal was when I was the most sober, and to remember the future, what I'm going to be thinking about that goal. Because when I'm in the moment, I'm being influenced by all this other stuff that the mind's mind is saying, don't listen to this, don't listen to this, don't listen to this, don't listen to that. Let's listen to the stuff that's coming in right now. And then those are the only things that get the vote. And I'm never pulled out into this other space to give these other things a vote that should have the vote. And in order to do that really, really well, I set up internal and external drivers. We have to understand what drives us to achieve externally, meaning I want to beat Don, right? Or I don't want to fail, or I want to get this time, whatever the case is. I've got some external drivers. But then I also have some internal things as well. Inside, what drives me to achieve, like and I want to understand what those are, so that when I'm in an event and I'm cold, wet, tired, it's dark, I'm hungry, I'm pissed off, I'm bored, whatever, right? I want to, hey, what's an external driver? And I want to grab that to help it spirit me through. But if that external driver is not accessible for whatever reason, right? Because it's been removed from me through either achievement or failure or somebody else's success or whatever, decision making, something, environmental things out of my control. Like that external driver has been removed from me. I don't have access to it anymore. Well, I better have an internal driver set up as redundancy, right? And so I've got an internal driver. And then if an internal driver, like I feel like I can't access it because I'm going through some emotional thing or like, and I'm in a mood or whatnot, it's like, okay, hey, I need to recognize I'm in a mood. My internal driver is not accessible to me. I better grab onto an external driver to spirit me through this trough until I get to the other side. And I want to have layered internal and external drivers. I like to have at least 2 of each, because then I can, when I'm out there and I start to succumb, I start to recognize my mind's mind is winning. Oh, and I got to my ring finger and I'm thinking about my goals and like, oh, internal and external drivers. Like, let me grab onto that one. I'm just going to hold on to that one and let it pull me forward and let all of this go, right? Oh, the external driver, and I'm going to grab the internal one to pull me through until then I can get my mojo back. And then I'm back in the groove, right? And so there's a lot of ways to work that. But that's the ring finger conversation. And then the little finger is the little things. The little things that I'm doing that have allowed me to be successful so far. Let's keep doing those things. Hey, the little things that I could do or that I'm not doing in order to continue doing, let's maybe do those things. And I attack the little finger from both sides of the coin, depending on the situation. But a lot of times when we're struggling to activate some of the other ones, just go to the little finger and pick one side of the coin of the little finger, activate those, and that will buy you some time and some momentum so that you can then have access to another finger. And that's the checking with the left hand material. And the more often I can cycle that, right? The best time to go to a therapist is when?
When you don't need one.
When you don't need one. When you're on a high. That's the best time to go to a therapist, right? The best time to do the right thing is when it's the easiest to do the right thing. Muscle memory, creating grooves, creating patterns, gaining momentum from the successes and the little wins that you've achieved, right? However, the thinking is like, do it when you're struggling. I'm going to go to the therapist when I'm struggling, right? Like that's very important, right? But wouldn't it be so much nicer to have gone to that therapist for a couple times when you were successful, so then the therapist gets to know you, you get to know the therapist, you can practice some of the things and get the feedback of being successful with it, right? And then that increases your baseline so that you don't need her as often or him as soon. But even outside of that, so when you do find yourself pitted against struggle, challenge, conflict, you go see the therapist, right? You have a body of work of habit, and then it just takes a little bit of cueing and you're able to get out of it sooner.
Develop those tools.
Exactly. And so when I'm out there and I build in these little things for me that say, hey, it's time, right? It's not watch based. It's like, hey, that just happens and it cues me no matter what's going on. Time to check in with the left hand, run through the fingers, pick a finger. Doesn't matter. Reinforce it, right? And that's how I protect against the mind's mind, because the more successful I get, the more crafty it needs to become. Right. And it's essential that it gets better. I got to be careful how I say this. I think, let me rephrase this. I don't ever think with the stuff that I'm doing and working with you, I find it the absolute rarest of occasions that you will be able to outmind your mind's mind when you absolutely need it for survival. Unless you're drunk, stoned, something else going on or whatever. Like, it is the rarest of rare people that will be able to outmind the mind's mind against survival, right? Stupidity probably is one of the things that some people have in spades that can out fucking do the mind's mind. But so I wouldn't worry about that. I wouldn't worry about trying to outmind my mind to get you out, because most of the time when you think you're in a survival situation, you're probably not. All you need to do is just stop, think, engage the left hand, and realize like, oh, yeah, got it. It just felt so daunting in the moment. And when you are in a survival situation, these are all the stories that you hear, all the books that you read, right? Of these famous, like, oh my God, your mind's going to take over. And it's going to do. However, the mind's mind is only going to be able to accomplish what you've trained being able to do. Right? The concept of survival is going to be there, but if you haven't built skills and capacity, right, the mind's trying to do survival, you're not going to be able to do it. So therein lies the relationship is essential, that you keep trying to work against it so that you can build competency, so that when that one rarest of cases comes up and we need to access the mind's mind for survival, it will be able to work. So we're actually, by using this, we're making ourselves better, right? That way.
And I can see, I'm going to interrupt just a second. I can see that developing these skills, they're life skills, really. They're just not for the trail, just not if you're going to row across the Atlantic Ocean or climb Mount Everest. These are life skills that a person, when do they need it? Just like the therapist, you need to develop the left hand skills, own it. Own each finger so that it's there when you need it. not, go shopping for it or trying to learn it when you're in crisis, because you can't take in things in crisis. You need to take it in when you're the most sober, as you're saying, and when you can retain things and develop those skills. And so I can see that diesel days and learning these concepts is so important for youth, for business people, for spouses, or just to become a better human. It's get these skills set. Own your left hand or your right hand or your foot, as you said.
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's I'm really proud of this. It's been 10, 15 years of my life trying to figure some things out, and then really putting this to something together for the last 7 or so years, 8 years, and then actually delivering it to other people, right? Dealing with self-doubt and like worried about what other people are going to think, or if they're going to attack it, they're going to challenge it, they're going to demystify or call my shit out. And it's like, I'm so worried about all of that. And it's like, you know what? Like, here it is. Like, here I am with the resume that I have, and this is what I've been using and still using. And I have my good days and my bad days, and I'm better at it sometimes than not. But I just want to share it. And then I just want to turn the light bulb on. And that's what this is just turn the light bulb on, and you figure out where you want to go. And then you have the ability now not to bump into that wall, take that door, or go out that window. Like, I don't care where you go with it. I just want to turn the light bulb on. And you'll find that just by turning the light bulb on and having this conversation right here, you're going to see the left hand appear in everywhere in your life. It's going to be crazy. You're not going to be able to get it out of your head. The thing with the diesel days is you get this material, but then you get to put it into practical application.
Right.
When your faculties and you got your guard let down and things start to pop in. And I've given you all the answers. Like, when you come here and we do this conversation over an hour and a half, I dig into some depth and some stuff. And then you put it into practical. I've given you all the answers before you even put it into practical application. And it's still hard. I've only seen two people be able to work through the left hand on their own, but they were really, really talented individuals that I've known in the past. So they might have been picking something up, but they're talented also in their own regard. Be able to like just auto-regulate and engage with the left hand in stride and use the answers. So you're getting the material, and you get the very controlled situation, right? Done it so many times. It's like, I already know what you're going to do. Like, a lot of times when I'm coaching, it's like, and I'll have another coach and they want to jump in and fix something right now. I'm like, no, don't fix it right now. It's going to manifest in 4 hours, and that will be the time to engage what's happening here. You need to let them struggle through it, because then in 4 hours from now, when you're having the conversation with them, it'll mean more. It'll be more sticky.
Yeah.
And so I'm building the coaching staff. We're actually getting ready to introduce the coaching, leadership and coaching type staff for this, so that people can, it's part of this licensing thing, so that they can take it and apply this in whatever area they need to in their life, right? Like, it doesn't have to be just for people that want to climb Mount Everest or run the Moab 240. It could be people who want to do well for others in whatever space they're in, or be better fathers. I've had people come here like, I want to be a better dad. I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better CEO. I want to be a better employee. I want to be a better human being, and so you get the practical application. And the neat thing is survival, safety, comfort. When you come here, I've already told you, like, you're not gonna outmind your mind's mind when it comes to survival. It's gonna take over. Nobody that I've experienced has been that so far developed that I was worried about. Not even remotely close. I don't even think I can myself. I think I'm pretty far down the line. I think I've been close. Safety. You're in a very, very, when you come here to Diesel, you are in a very controlled environment. This has been done for 162 people. It's been tested at this and that. Like, you are safe, right? Like, the level of safety, it's a little bit here, but it's never going to be way up here to where it's actually right. And then you're going to have the coaching staff also watching, and then you have the guardian angel watching the coaching staff, making sure that the coaches aren't just so invested in having the individual win that they're here, like, this person's outside of it all, right, to make sure that everything's good. Like, you're 100% safe. And even knowing that, like that was my super talent with designing training in the military, right? So I'm your company commander and you guys are my Marines, and we're going to go do a training environment. And training environment is to replicate war so you can be ultimately successful when other people are trying to kill you. Well, in the United States, I can't really put you in training situations where you're like the loss of your life or limb or eyesight or even general health would be allowed, right? There's so much involved. Like it's inherently now within its dangers, but we've got all these safety mechanisms and protocols in place. So when you go to a training environment with me, like you're safe, right? Barring an accident or whatever, an anomaly, like, so let's say relatively safe, right? I have to create a training environment so realistic that you suspend that belief so that you can act and feel and experience what you need to feel so that I can get you as close as possible to understanding and appreciating the environment and the energy of combat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we do here is we work and push and drive, and you will actually relinquish like your thought that you're safe. Yeah, you're perfectly safe, right? Perfectly safe, barring that mountain lion that hangs out in that backyard. But other than that, don't worry about that little guy. So the only thing you really have to manage while you're here is your mind's mind tackling against comfort, right? And I let it entertain safety because it's good practice. But at the end of the day, if I feel like, hey, you are lost in the spiral with your mind's mind and your mind because of safety, I will just like grab you by the arms and look at you and be like, hey, look, man, there's the medical kit, there's the AED, there's the fire truck is here, the hospital's there, here's the safety. Like, you are safe. Everything is like, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. You were using the guise of safety to shroud comfort. And then there's the learning point.
I'm okay.
I'm okay. Yeah. What were you pointing at that makes you think otherwise, right?
As I listen to all of this, and it sounds very one-on-one. You're having conversations or experiences one-on-one out on the trail, wherever you might be, and maybe in a boardroom. There's a lot of one-on-one stuff. But as you were telling the story, I started thinking about the documentary, The Standard, and 4 elite athletes on this boat rowing for 31 days across the Atlantic. Yeah. 33 days. And I'm thinking, what kind of mind's mind, what's the interaction of those 4 people? Who brings up a topic about questioning safety? Who's the dynamics that happen with those four guys on that ship, that vessel is another a complex event in itself besides just you listening. Now there's 4 people interacting. That's an interesting study.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my whole trip. My whole trip was watching and trying to battle my own. Now I'm on a boat with 3 ridiculously talented, awesome human beings, right? And just watching the mind's mind at work on these guys, and how can I support them as a peer and a teammate instead of some righteous fucking guy, right?
Sure.
And there's the art of leadership in the craft. It's like, oh, hey, cool. Like, hey, I'm watching the mind's mind at work on this guy. And it's like, okay, how can I support him from yielding to that? What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And okay, this person, well, look at these 2 people are feeding each other's mind's mind. They're not even aware. Like, how can I do that? And without like trying to be this guru or something, this righteous, pompous person. And it's like, because at the end of the day, I'm only aware of what I'm doing that I can be aware of. I wonder what I'm actually succumbing to that I'm not aware of. Right. And so, yeah, that was that row across the Atlantic Ocean has really helped me understand and appreciate this material for myself, like even deeper. And it's allowed me to go deeper with certain individuals that are at a place that can genuinely like receive it and understand it, right? Like we could have the conversation, all of us together, and you would be able to sort of understand here or there, but like, finding the people that you can really go into the really, 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 really deep places with it, that excites me, because through those conversations with those individuals, I refine my stuff, I work a little bit better, or I understand it from another lens, and that makes me more potent to being able to connect with somebody else in their situations. So I'm constantly improving with all that. Just this conversation with you all is great for me too, like just to hear it out loud and the questions that you ask. And
Well, if you want to learn more, the website that you can learn more about either the Diesel Days or the Hardway Project, which explain that a little bit more. The Hardway Project is a monthly subscription. What would someone expect if they signed up for that, Tosh?
Yeah, you get a PDF every month. It's $25 for the subscription. You get a PDF every month, and it contains 2 Hardway workouts. So I give you a workout that's pretty challenging, and we offer scaling options or whatever. And then I have these 5 functional areas of my learning objectives. And so I build these workouts to try to train a learning objective in some of the subsets of that learning objective, right? Using my background with curriculum development when I was instructing at ALC. And so I craft the workouts specifically knowing, like, I want to introduce this stimulus to get your mindset in this certain place, and how is that going to affect performance, and how can I tap into an internal driver, an external driver? How can I get you to think about something different so that you can actually do more than you think you can, or understand things, right? And I'll explain the intent of the workout. I'll give you specific things to capture or try to be aware of during the event, and then what to write down or think about and reflect on after the event. And I just kind of give a general overview discussion. I'll do that for 2 workouts. I have the third workout is a Hardway challenge. So this is something that's a little bit longer, a little bit more intensive for people that like, you've read Michael Easter's book, right? The Comfort Crisis. Phenomenal book. If you haven't read it, you gotta dig into that. And so these are like these little mini misogyes, whatever the word is.
Yeah, we've said it all the ways. We're not sure exactly.
And so every month it's like a 1 hour to 2 hour, sometimes a 3 hour workout, and then every quarter it's something a little longer. I shoot for like 5 or 6 hours, but it puts you through something, right? So you get the 2 Hardway workouts, you get the Hardway challenge, and then I actually give you an awareness and habit activity. So it's a thought process, something that is in your everyday life, to understand where your habits are, where your patterns are, and introduce concepts, right? And so the things that you're learning through the physical workouts apply to the boardroom, breakfast table, and the things that you're doing in your activity awareness stuff is breakfast table, boardroom stuff, but it applies to battlefield and boardroom, right? So you get those. So those are the 4 things that you get in the PDF. You get access to the private Facebook group and Instagram account, where we create a social network with everybody to continue integrating and lessons learning from each other, and to create our little community. And you get a webinar once a month. We host a webinar on Wednesdays where it's a big Zoom call, and then the audience logs in, and we talk about the previous month or the current month, and we just dig into some of the finer things. And it's a platform for people that want to learn a little bit more, understand more of the intent, or to ask questions about what they were feeling or this or that. Like, and I'll go for as long as anybody wants on that. Usually they're about an hour and a half. And I record all of those, and then I host the recordings in a folder. So if you didn't make the monthly webinar, you can access that as well. And then if you're, for $25 a month to be able to do that, it's not meant to replace any workout regimen that you have or workout routine or program. It's meant to enhance it. It's meant to enhance your life as well. I have a lot of people that don't do the workouts, but they just like reading the material, because then when they get on the webinar, we talk about how it applies into everyday life by just solving a workout. And if that doesn't, like, we offer so Rex just retooled the website to be more markety, business selly, because I terrible at all that, and I just don't really. That's not what I'm about. But he's got a link on there so that you can download a free trial, and then I wrote a sample month that is the same as what our regular subscription is, so that you can just kind of look and hell, this is what I get for the sample month. But that's what the subscription is. I'm really excited. It's allowing me to share this stuff a little bit more with an audience that I would never normally have access to, or that just potentially don't have time to come here to Boulder to do a diesel day, or it's expensive, but it's worth it. So
yeah.
When do you have time?
Well,
you are a busy man, Tosh. You are busy.
I know. Between doing all these
you.
random podcasts, I don't have time for anything else.
I'm sorry. We apologize.
No, man, you're great. I love you guys, man.
Check in with your left hand. Are you okay,
okay.
Tosh? Are you okay,
Scott?
If you don't know why we're laughing, you need to watch the YouTube simulcast of that, because that was a good one, Tosh.
I think the world of you guys, man. I really do.
You're awesome. Well, great. Well, we hope that this grew your knowledge a little bit, and that you can take some of these tips and tricks. If you want to learn more, go to crookedbutterfly.com. We'll, of course, include that in the show notes. And, Tosh is an amazing dude. We've been able to spend some time with each other. Don's been able to spend a lot of time with Tosh. And
that's another slowest known time comment. Did you see that, Tosh?
It was not a dig. It was not a
He's
dig.
A digger.
It was not
but
a
I'm
dig.
I'm going to use this opportunity real quick to get myself out of the dig and just put Don deeper in the hole.
Oh, good.
His time at the Tahoe 200 would have been calculated in weeks had I not stumbled upon him at 8:30 in the evening with him curled up in the fetal position, taking a little snoozer. Right? And
I was working my left hand.
Yeah, you were. And I'll tell you what, that's why you do beautiful things for other people, man. And look at the friendship that we've. That was how long? Was that 10 years? How long ago was that? 7 years? 8 years ago?
Yeah, I don't know.
So 7 years ago.
Yeah, 7.
And look at the friendship and the amazing human being that I got to meet by just that one chance encounter. And but yeah. Anyways, Scott, you want to talk slowest known time? That guy right there, Tahoe 200. It'd have been 7 days and 15 hours or something.
You know what, though? He completed it, and he completed the slowest known time of the Western States Trail with you. He completed it. I can't even say that I completed it because I didn't start it. So you're I can make as much fun as I want to, but you two are still heads and tails above.
You were there, though. You did support with us for the Western States, and you were there when I had to crawl around the track because Don wanted to do the extra 400 meters at the end of that thing, so it would be the official distance. So
I sensed weakness at that moment, Tosh. I thought maybe I could. He thought I could beat you if I said, let's just go this extra lap.
You did it. Terry Fletcher,
maybe you didn't know your way around.
Terry Fletcher just actually sent me a text the other day, which was cool. We were just talking about him a couple weeks ago.
Very nice. Yeah, he was one of the other holders of the crown for slowest known time. He was out there with us.
Yeah. All right, Tosh, thank you very much. Now go out and run.
Mas.